Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today. The first forester in 1909 was a Frenchman called Gifford Pinchot. He said, "We depend on natural resources, forestry, to feed, clothe, shelter, and transport us. Without natural resources, prosperity is out of reach." And that theme from 1909 carries us right into 2020s and 2025s and 25's 25, because without natural resources, prosperity is out of reach. Louisiana forests were not always as abundant as they are today. In 1947, when the Louisiana Forestry Association was organized, our forest land was denuded. We did not have many trees getting replanted after harvest. The idea back in 1947s were to cut and then move on to somewhere else. And that began to change in 1947. In 1947, the forestry organization was organized, and our mission was to reforest Louisiana. And since that time, we have done such a great job that today our forests, and this is quite a remarkable feat, we are growing 70% more wood in our forests than what we're taking out. This has been both a blessing and a challenge. The blessing is that we have trees. It's good for wildlife, good for carbon capture, good for the products that we produce. But with more trees growing than what we're taking out, we run into an issue of overstocking, the susceptibility of insects and disease, and really our forests were not as well managed as they needed to be. And that all changed just about 3-4 years ago. When Mills, it's like suddenly there was an epiphany around the rest of the country that, hey, we ought to be looking at Louisiana again. They have a great resource. Let's bring industry to Louisiana. And since that time, we've had four new sawmills come to the state, and they're all in various phases of getting up and organized. Each of those sawmills is about a $150 million investment. Each of those hire between 150 and 200 people. And the great thing is that these are not in the cities, but they're in rural areas. They're keeping our young men and women in rural communities with good paying jobs and helping them raise a family, be productive at home in their rural areas. And those sawmills are very much a traditional part of forest industry. That's the sheltering part of forest industry that we talk about. I want to talk a little bit about the transportation part of forestry. A few years ago, under the past administration, there was an emphasis and interest to move away from fossil fuel production, and looking at renewables everywhere from wind to solar and other geothermal, and we began talking a little bit about the biofuels, recycling and the biofuels that we could generate. Biofuel industry in Louisiana has started coming to the state, and they're looking at producing a biofuel that would make a wood pellet that would be transported around the world and replace coal in many countries with a renewable fuel. There's also liquid fuels. There's a plant up in northeast Louisiana that is online to, once they get permitting all done, online to produce a biofuel. That biofuel, it was funny, I had asked the owner of that company, I said, how much of that material that you're going to be producing is coming to Louisiana? He said, none of it. We're going to use the Louisiana resource, but we'll be loading it all in tank cars and sending it out to California. California's renewable fuel mandate basically is moving away from fossil fuels, and they'll be using more and more renewable fuels, and wood is certainly going to be providing that source. Another plant in Louisiana in our border with Texas is looking at a sustainable aviation fuel, making aviation fuel out of wood. And you say, well, how can they do that? I thought I just burned wood for heat and that. But when you look at the chemical composition of wood, basic elements of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and when you apply heat to that, you can basically turn wood into a fabric that you can wear, a food that you can eat. The sugars from wood can be made out of wood chips, and then the renewable fuel that can be made out of wood. So it's quite exciting that these new plants are looking at using our resource, using this extra amount of wood that we're growing for meeting these demands for renewable fuels. Now, we heard of terms like carbon capture and storage, injection wells, and all of that. And a lot of that has been an incentive with previous administrations. They've put a lot of tax money into encouraging that kind of investment. What the new administration will do with that investment still remains to be seen. That question was asked to many of these renewable fuel plants, and we asked them, is this a one and done situation? Are we moving away from all this carbon capture and storage? And they said not really, because still the big plants, the Amazons, the Walmarts, the Microsofts and all still want to be friendly to the environment, still want to reduce their carbon footprint, and they still, according to these companies, still believe that there will be a market for incentives, for contributions coming to these companies to continue their work at carbon capture. Our trees, 15 million acres of trees, half the state of Louisiana, is capturing carbon every day. Every day. The photosynthetic process, and that's as technical as I'll get with you, the photosynthetic process takes carbon out of the atmosphere every day. We don't have to do anything about it. It's just doing it and turning it into a solid wood that carbon is captured in that wood, so that when we cut that tree and make a home or make furniture, that carbon is captured for years and years to come. The extra amount with the industry coming in and the carbon that they're generating from their manufacturing process, the incentives there is to try and capture that carbon, inject it into the ground in very deep wells and in a safe manner. And that's the big question. Is it done safely? Is it done in a way that is beneficial to our landowners, to the economy, and to the whole issue of capturing carbon? From the standpoint of the landowner wants to keep their forests as forests. And the reason for that is they like the land. A lot of people may say that, well, people don't care about the land. All they're interested in is cutting it and then leaving it alone. Well, that's not the case in Louisiana. In Louisiana and all across the South, where most of the land is privately owned, the commitment, the stewardship, the sustainability of this resource is when I cut, I replant, and then move on. So the landowner sees an opportunity with these facilities that come in and want to put wells on their property to see if they can drop an injection well to do that, offers the landowner an incentive to make that possible. So before all of that is even done, there's tremendous permitting and all of that. And up in northeast Louisiana, when we talked about the biofuels up in that area, that whole project was a community-wide effort. Community got behind the project, they understood what the company was doing, and they saw a benefit to doing it. In some other parts of the state, the carbon capture has not gone as smooth as one would like. It's been done kind of haphazardly. There's been a poor public information campaign along the way, and when people don't understand something, the normal reaction is, I'm opposed to it. So if carbon capture is going to occur in this state, and if injection wells are going to incur and happen in this state, it is going to require a whole lot different carbon capture and a commitment to better promote and better understand public awareness of what is going on. The benefit of all this to the landowner is that they get resources to keep their land, keep their forests as forests. They sell their main products for homes, for paper, for plywood, for furniture. One thing we don't talk much about, and that is the benefit that our forests play for wildlife. We're all interested in the wildlife in Louisiana, and the best tool for wildlife is forest management. Keeps the forest young, keeps the forest healthy. Hunting and fishing is a big item in Louisiana, and because our forests are producing good habitat for wildlife, and our forests are managed to protect our waters, that both fish and wildlife and terrestrial wildlife are all beneficiaries of the forest resource. So our forests are big, our forests are growing, and we have a wonderful opportunity to move forward. Someone asked about the tax incentives that we see. If the new administration decides that the federal government is going to move away from investing tax dollars, public dollars into carbon capture and storage, we'll have to see about the local industry that will continue to support it. But the other item that is very beneficial in Louisiana, and that's our state agencies. Our Louisiana Workforce Investment Council that helps train people when they come into Louisiana. Many of the companies that are coming into the state are saying the benefit of Louisiana Workforce Commission and helping to train people is a plum for Louisiana, that it is very helpful to us. The economic development, Department of Economic Development, and the incentives there to help people come in and utilize our resource. All this is important. All this will help our forests continue to grow and our landowners to prosper, and for forestry and that to grow. And Mr. Pinchot, again, back when he said, without natural resources, prosperity is out of reach. Louisiana is a great place to grow and to prosper, and we will continue to do that with the public support for what that we do. I'll take some questions if you have any. And one of the big topics that we have is carbon. We hear of carbon, we hear of climate change, we hear of carbon injection, capture and storage. What does all this mean to the forest landowner, to the state? And we'll share a little bit of information about why that is important to forestry. Well, forests cover nearly half the land area of Louisiana. And our traditional forest products generate about $14 billion in the Louisiana economy every year, hires 40,000 men and women in the forest industries, and these are mostly in rural areas. But our forests continue to grow more than what is coming out of the forest every year. And we're looking for markets to take more of our wood resource and turn them into products that the public are demanding. And the public is very interested now in moving away from fossil fuels and looking at natural resources like forests. So the question is, how do our forests play a role in making those products for transportation, for aviation, for heating and cooling? How do our forests play in that dynamic of market? So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Every day, our trees, which are billions of trees in Louisiana's forests alone, are capturing carbon each and every day, 24 hours a day. We need carbon in the atmosphere to help our crops grow, our trees grow, our agricultural crops to grow. Carbon capture from our industry is a way to reduce the pollution and take advantage of injecting it in the ground, most importantly safely, and in a way that benefits the landowner and our communities. That effort is managed by our Department of Energy and Natural Resources, our communities getting support behind it. We have a carbon capture program that is making a biofuel up in northeast Louisiana that will make a transportation fuel that will be used out west to reduce their footprint on fossil fuels. Part of the incentive, the federal incentive, was to get a tax break if they inject that carbon deep into the ground. Tax policy does generate interest and does generate business decisions. So we'll have to see if the new administration is equally excited about doing renewable natural resources as the previous administration does. But to the forest landowner, the most important thing to the forest landowner is, I want to keep my land in forest. I want my forest to remain as forest. And what kind of income stream will help me do that? And if it's carbon capture, great. If it's wildlife enhancement, great. If it's products, great. But I just need that market to keep my land in forest.
And what do you want the main takeaway from your speech today? What do you want people to remember?
I want people to know that the forests of Louisiana are very much a part of this state. 50% of the land area in the state is forest. It's managed by more than 40,000 men and women that work in our industries. Our forests every day are capturing carbon out of the atmosphere, cleaning our air, producing habitat for wildlife, making sure that our wildlife has abundant food and cover, and to improve our environment, to keep our men and women working in rural areas and not having to move out to main cities in order to make a living. So forestry is a tool to keep forestry and employment in Louisiana growing. It's happening. We're attracting more mills to the state. We're growing in the state. And carbon is part of it. It's not the only part of it, but we do want people to know that the forests are doing carbon capture all the time.